I'm Richard Peterson from CGI, and joining me on stage are Angie McCann and Kevin Bolligan. Angie, why don't you just take a few seconds to introduce yourself?
My name is Angie McCann. I am an IT director at MAPFRE Insurance, and I've been in IT for 30 years. My most recent effort, and what I'm here for today, is I was responsible for the movement of our commercial auto and garage product to the cloud.
Hi, I'm Kevin Bolligan. I'm with the Vice President of IT for MAPFRE Insurance. I've been with MAPFRE for 16 years, and I work closely with Angie on the project. And I do realize I'm standing between all of you and dinner, so I promise this will not go late if I have to pull Richard off the stage.
Awesome. And again, I'm Richard Peterson. I'm with CGI. I've been with CGI for 12 years. Have 35 years of P&C insurance experience. Most of that experience is in project and program delivery for agent-facing systems as well as service center solutions. So today, we're going to spend a little time talking about the move of MAPFRE's commercial auto and garage policy administration over to Guidewire. A big part of that move was basically configuring Policy Center and then also configuring the cloud. So we actually have 4 or 5 major components of the program as defined by the slides you're looking at right here. So we had, like I said, we had Policy Center that we had to configure for commercial auto and garage. Some of that configuration included taking previously manual coverages and automating them. Another piece was configuring Guidewire rating, as well as configuring agency portal as the agent-facing component. So we had to build the integration between agency portal, and then another big part of this build was integrations with MAPFRE's legacy applications for billing, claims, print, and stat reporting. And then finally, the last big piece of the puzzle was policy conversion. All right, so where we're headed, where we're headed with this discussion is just to give you a little insight into what actually occurred on the program, and hopefully give you some insight into the challenges, some of the successes, and also some of the lessons learned as part of executing a pretty large program. The program itself was about, from start to finish, was about 15 months. So again, the way this is going to work, I'm going to just be asking Angie and Kevin some questions, and then based upon their responses, you'll get the insight that hopefully you're looking for. Also, I'd like to ask that if you have questions, hold them till the end. We've got a pretty big Q&A session set up at the end. And also, even after that, if you have additional questions, we'll be available in the CGI booth at G10. All right? So you guys ready to get started?
We are.
All right. So let me start with Kevin with the first question. What business problems were you solving through this modernization?
Well, for MAPFRE, we had a strategic objective to be able to grow our commercial auto and garage. It was extremely important for our growth in the Massachusetts market. And when we looked at what we had available to us to be able to achieve that goal, we had a system that was really end of life, and that's probably being generous. It had been around for a long time. We'd done a lot to it in partnership with CGI, but we realized it was time to move forward into something that was more modern for our agents, more modern for our internal processing group, and ultimately something that could be adaptable, more flexible to the challenges that we know we were going to face in the business objective and obviously in the future. So for us, it made sense within the time frame that we had, which from an IT standpoint, there's always a time constraint. There's always a budget constraint. And so for us, we looked at just replacing Policy Center and Agency Portal two of the the real key components of what's going to bring in more business. And we left the back-end systems to the legacy billing and claim center, knowing that we would touch those at a future point in time. We already had on-prem Guidewire, but we decided to go into the cloud because we felt really it was the right move for us, especially when Richard says 15 months. That seems like a long time, but it was not. And when you're talking about the business saying, look, this is extremely critical to our success now and certainly in the next 5 years. So we felt going to the cloud was absolutely the right move for us.
Excellent. Thanks, Kevin. Angie, can you walk me through the project plan from from planning to implementation?
So we started the project with a 6-week inception phase. That was a great time for us to go through the scope that we had agreed to, review the backlog, develop an overall architectural plan, and determine what we wanted to do for a rollout, how the program was going to be planned. And the team did a great job with that. We had 11 one-month sprints where at the end of each sprint we did a demo for the business, and the business was heavily involved in all of the definition of the Agile stories, creation of the acceptance criteria, looking at all of the screens. So they had a lot of buy-in. It was their product, so it wasn't IT delivering something to them. Our partners worked very well to bring them in and keep them in throughout the process. Once we got to UAT testing, we were expecting a lot more issues than we hit, and we really didn't hit much, and it was a tribute to the team. They did a great quality job. Our rollout was initially with internal staff. We thought, again, we might hit some issues, and we want internal staff to see those first. The issues were few and far between, surprisingly. It went very well, and we were able to roll out to the agent force on time with great results.
Thanks, Angie. All right, this next one is for both of you. What were some of the biggest surprises or challenges?
Oof. Well, from my point of view, my biggest surprise was we had our executive sponsor, our IT sponsor, and our business delivery executive all leave the company at the beginning of the project. So it was an interesting start. When you lose senior leadership that was supporting the effort, you have other people that have to step into the role and be able to pick up the slack. But clearly, that was it was a difficult start. And then on top of that, there was a small event that occurred worldwide called the pandemic, which really, when you look at it, we had to have our team adapt to the fact that they were working not in person but remote. And while I know everybody works remote and we all say it was okay, it was a challenge, and it was a new challenge. And when you're remote 5 days a week and you don't know when you're going to be back in the office, and on top of that, you're working on a project of this size, this importance, that's unique with Guidewire Cloud, which was new for folks at MAPFRE. I would say that we came out really well on the other end, and plus the personal stress of just dealing with the pandemic. Everybody's lives was impacted. It wasn't just one person. So clear from my point of view, that was probably two of the biggest curveballs you could ask for, and again, the team did a great job.
Thanks. Anything to add to that, Angie?
So I would echo the pandemic being difficult. There were team members who I didn't even meet until this conference. So, I always saw them on Zoom meetings, but it was a pleasure to get to meet them. The other area that was a bit of a challenge, we hit some performance issues. And so normally in IT, you have everything on-prem, you hit a performance issue, and it's easy. Everyone gets together and solves it. So we were remote, and we had the cloud, we had our on-prem pieces, we had our middleware, we had our agent front end, we had our back-end legacy system. So it seemed we had a lot of places to look, but there was so much collaboration between Guidewire and CGI that we found little areas to tweak and really got our rating in great shape in short order. So it was a great success story, I think, in that regard. The other area that was a challenge was, as Kevin said, when the sponsors left, we had different sponsors take on the role that maybe weren't as familiar with the business. And so the user stories where we defined what the system would do with the acceptance criteria, became our documentation, as you often hear in Agile. You know, you're using those Agile stories as your documentation, and for us, it came true to life because we needed that information so that we could get everyone up to speed.
Very good.
At least you didn't say me. I'm glad to hear that, because I was not the challenge, so that's good.
All right, another one for both of you. So what benefits have you derived from implementing Guidewire Policy Center?
So Guidewire Policy Center in the cloud, I mean, Guidewire Policy Center in general, I mean, we're much quicker to market, so we can react to what the business is asking us to do. So even though we're heavily regulated and we have to, you know, have things filed, there are other aspects of Policy Center that we're able to change quickly, whether it's, you know, some workflow from a back-end processing standpoint, or, you know, tweaking other things that they just say, hey, this is great, but I would like this. And you know, and I think that that definitely was one of the things that stood out, and I think in the end is going to end up driving for us more business faster, and allow us to work with our agents in a way that we hadn't been able to do before. And then the other piece too is that, well, the nicest part, at least for me, from an IT perspective, is we're able to sample working in the cloud in a very small opportunity, which is Policy Center. And so now we've learned a lot. We understand, you know, really what's involved. And then when we do our project plan for when we take our on-prem installation, which is all 3 centers, and move to the cloud, we're much better prepared. You know, we had that great benefit. So I think for us, we had a great learning experience.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Anything to add to that, Angie?
Sure. I would add the easy rate filings. So rate filings are a lot easier having that. And then just having the full Guidewire support. So everything in the cloud is supported there. Our releases with all of you at CGI and Guidewire have just been so smooth. The code deployments, everything is just a lot smoother than we anticipated.
Awesome. Good. All right, similar question. What benefits have you achieved from the implementation of Guidewire Cloud?
That's yours.
So I spoke to it a little bit. Well, one of the things also was the code reviews. So we got regular code reviews throughout the process. So as we went through, they looked at our Guidewire team, looked at our code, worked with RSI, made recommendations, and we were able to put in all of their recommendations. And the result of that is a really quick upgrade to the subsequent releases. We're going to be at Flen in January, which I think is pretty amazing considering we just installed 6 months ago.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Okay, another one for you, Angie. What has been the outcome of this modernization so far?
So definitely easier for our agents. The agents love the system. They love that a lot of what was previously manual is now all in the system for them. So a lot of ease of use and, again, easy upgrades and time to market.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Anything to add to that, Kevin?
No, I was just going to echo Angie's comments. I mean, the reality is we knew we had to move off of it. We knew we had a tight timeline, but we were able to deliver additional functionality, you know, in Policy Center to the customer and benefits they didn't ask for. So, you know, the reality is it was not just a move, but it was a move plus. And in the end, that's what really made them happy and makes them more engaged, and then makes them ask for more. But you know, it's all part of the cycle, and I think again, you know, just proves the benefits of the decision to actually go in that direction.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so Angie, what aspects of the delivery process contributed to the success of this initiative?
So as I mentioned earlier, the Agile sprints, I think, following a strong program governance, using the Agile sprints, having that acceptance criteria in there, it gave us a great roadmap. It gave us an easy key when we needed to bring on other testers. It was, you know, we gave them the stories, we showed them the acceptance criteria, and everyone could just get up to speed. Again, the documentation in those stories just served a dual purpose with the Agile sprints.
Mm-hmm. Anything to add, Kevin?
Angie put it very succinctly,
All right.
so it was
very good, very good. All right, Kevin, this one's for you. If you were advising another insurer, what are the top 3 pieces of advice you'd give them?
the top 3 pieces of advice. For our project, having an agent front end with Policy Center you would think that you would have two different SIs. We chose one SI, which was CGI, and that hands down was the right decision. And I couldn't predict that we would lose the sponsors we lost and have a worldwide pandemic, but in the end, having one SI as that partner avoided, it's not me, it's downstream, it's upstream, and and we've been in projects where you've had different SIs and you've had that problem. But I think that really was one of the cornerstones for making it successful, because in the end, it was one team communicating back and forth, regardless of where the problem was, and that just accelerated our ability to, address something that was last minute. Oh, this isn't working in test, and we got to make sure we tackle this. So for me, that was extremely important, and I think, again, well executed. Angie mentioned agile. I know we all talk about it. It's an industry term, but it really paid benefits for us because we typically in the past had used 45-page documents for every requirement. You can't comb through it. Your business area says, I never said that, I never signed off on that. But really using agile allowed us to present to them in user stories short, concise wording of what they were asking for, what we agreed we would do and they would sign off on, and then what they were getting. And really, in the end, that stopped scope creep. That stopped them from saying, I never said that. It didn't stop them from asking for more, and it also created good change management for us in that discipline. But in the end, that really, following that, having a Scrum Master, all those things, it really did make the project run very smoothly. I think the last, and it's going to sound cliche, but it's really not, is communication. And I say communication because it was communication with CGI, Richard and his team. It was communication, within the MAPFRE team. It was communicating in a new way with the pandemic and Teams and pop-ups and IMs and phone calls and texts and every other way that you can think of. But the reality was that good communication allowed it to feel like one team. It wasn't CGI or MAPFRE. It was CGI and MAPFRE as one team. And we took responsibility and accountability for the project as one group. Yeah. And I think doing that with Guidewire, being there as the essentially at the bottom of the pillar, holding us up as we're trying to build it out, was tremendous. And it was good communication, all the way through and all the way back. And I think it was really one of the, nice cornerstones of the projects, because that doesn't always happen. You get a lot of miscommunication in what's going on. And then, of course, when you have your senior support leave, it leads to greater, problems in communication. But we were able to avoid that. And again, it was that one group, one team feeling from, Guidewire from their end through CGI to us, and then, back through. So again, it was really good.
Very good. And I'd like to add on to, not really add on, but accentuate some of the things that Kevin talked about. When I look at the program execution and what happened, there's two words that come to mind for me. It's discipline and accountability. We had strong discipline from an execution standpoint. We operated in 4-week sprints. We did all the ceremonies. We did demos, which again created that sense of accountability. But accountability was probably the strong thing for me. There was very little finger pointing. And, Kevin, Angie, and I were at the kind of the tip of the spear from an accountability standpoint. We would always, make sure that we ask ourselves the question, what have I done, or what could I have done to change the outcome or the situation? So we were always in that mode of operation. And we really tried to keep some of the things that typically get escalated. We stopped it from being escalated because we, again, ask our folks to take on that accountable position as well. It's like, again, just ask yourself a simple question. What can I do? What more can I do to change the outcome? So that went really, really well. Anything else you guys want to add before we move on to questions? So we're at the end of the questions for Kevin and Angie. Wanted to make sure that we had a lot of time for the audience to ask us questions. So what questions do you have for us? We've got one in the back. Just a second. Okay.
So the lines that you moved into the cloud, were they also on the previous versions of Guidewire, or this was the brand new implementation?
No, this was a complete modernization. So
So you're also running some in-house as well at the same time, right?
Correct. So we have Guidewire for other lines of business that are on-premise for all three centers. For this implementation, we just decided to do Policy Center because, again, time to market was critical because we had a clock that was not going to stop ticking, and there was no way to move it.
And is there a plan to move the ones in-house into the cloud in the later?
At some point, we're going to look to move Billing Center and Claim Center off of the legacy system and move those to the cloud. Right now, it's not there's no time component to it because it's custom to what we have, and we wrote it and we own it. So what we'll really do is we want to evaluate the success of what we've done, and then as that completes and we get ready, we would then launch another project in 2023.
Thank you.
So forgive me if you already mentioned this, but I was curious what your team size was, and then if you could share your budget as well.
So from a team size standpoint, we had just 3 internal team members, and the rest of our team was CGI and our business partners.
And budget?
I don't know that that's something I'd share. I'm not quite sure I can, so I'm going to pass on that one.
It had a few zeros after it.
Yeah, it wasn't.
But for us, we had to look at the landscape to say, again, within a short period of time, what was available to us in the market.
Right.
And again, what we picked was absolutely economical for what was asked for. Without giving you exact dollars, I look at it as it was definitely a value add in terms of what we paid for, what we got. And then in the end, as Angie mentioned, we've had few defects in production, and I think it speaks to the hallmark of what we did and where we were more than the money that we spent.
Yeah, and I think the other point is we came in under budget. So if that gives you a gauge at all, we did come in under budget, which was nice.
Well, I really love the question, and I'm going to go through the same path here. No need to know the details of the budget, but where most of your budget went to. If you only had 3 internal individuals, and there is a lot of zeros behind that one, I'm trying to understand how I can fill the blank.
So, of course, the purchase of Guidewire itself, and then our service integrators, CGI, we paid that team to do the work for us. And of course, we had our business partners who were involved in all the story writing. They also participated in the testing. So,
Yeah, and the reason we didn't have more internal people, I'm sure you're curious as to why it was only 3 people, would be my guess for that question. We had a small group because we were working on the on-prem version, and it was for our largest lines of business. So we had people that were already there. At the time this came up as a business objective, it's hard to say no when someone says you have to do it. So this was the creative way of solving the problem. And again, CGI came in, stepped in with all the right people, and filled a lot of gaps that we could have filled, but just didn't have the people available at that time.
we would have had to delay for sure the
Correct.
start of the project
Correct.
without CGI.
Swam, how many folks did you have offshore?
At the peak side, were 35 people.
Yeah.
And the mix offshore to onshore was like 80-20, right?
Yeah.
I believe, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi there. I have a question about your selection of the agency portal. You went down Duck Creek. What was the reasoning for going down Duck Creek, and how did you actually come to that decision?
So we already used Agency Portal for other lines of business, and we wanted to create a simple integrated experience for the agents of what they already see. Before it was definitely different, definitely one of the complaints, and so we decided to just make it the same, and we had just upgraded to the new version of Agency Portal for our other lines of business, so it just made sense that we would follow suit. So it was the same look and feel, same everything. And again, CGI had done the agency portal work for us on the other one, so it made it much easier for our interactions.
Hi, this is Prashad here. Question to implementation partner, right? So if you take commercial lines like workers' comp, there are a lot of customizations done in legacy. If I understand correctly, when you want to move to cloud, Guidewire recommends to be as much as out-of-box functionalities. What are the techniques that you try to convince the business? Because the typical mentality is do whatever is there in legacy as it is, right? So what are the techniques or processes that you came up with to convince business to change that business process so that the cost benefit is good?
So we had some of that where we were able to maintain out-of-the-box functionality, but we did have to create a client layer where we were keeping customizations for MAPFRE. Soyam, you got something to add?
Yeah, specifically on that, right? So what we try to do is explain the business what out-of-box provides and convince them at most length that this is how it's going to benefit you. And end of the day, right, I think Angie will agree with me that my famous line, this is a product, and I think we need to adapt to the product. Else if we move away from the product and customize a lot, we might have a lot of issues in future upgrades and other things. We might, and I think you're right saying that many a times we try to recreate the legacy system. I think we're trying to enforce that thought process to the business, and many a time the business bought to that and change a lot of legacy process internally in the process as well on their side, in the operational things. But some of them, as Richard was trying to say, that those are regulatory things, so we had to implement them. That is the customer layer, but many things MAPFRE bought into what we proposed. Some of them to highlight, right? I think. Again, from a technical perspective, right, with Guidewire, with cloud, I think the standards that Guidewire has set up, the anti-patterns and all those things, we try to highlight and try to get the best out of it.
Yeah, I think when you're trying to get people to change what they're doing, which is never easy, and always hard when you're moving to a new system, I think putting real dollars to what they're asking for at the user story level help people realize what it was going to be. And you know, when you're in the cloud, people have to remember you upgrade every year, you stay current, and that cost, whatever it is to just retest, moves forward. So it's not a one-time fee. And so that was, you know, part of the communication to the business. You need to understand it's not just a cost today, it's a cost moving forward. Do you really want this? And a lot of times we were able to negotiate them off of that, which was good because they understood it.
And as Soyam mentioned, I mean, we started with a design tenet that this is a package,
Right.
you know, and so you really want to adapt your business to, you know, what the package provides out of the box. And we were very successful with that. And again, I think a big part of that was Kevin and Angie putting a cost to the customizations. So.
And we also explained to them that the upgrades would be harder, moving forward would be harder, and I think that in the end, the program that we delivered, which was almost, you know, defect-free, it was in great shape. I think now we've gained their trust. So when we say we need to stick to out of the box, they know this is why, and here's the end result. You got a system that's working very well.
Other questions?
I've got a couple of questions. First of all, was your rollout nationwide, or if not, approximately how many states were addressed? And then my other question is really how you went about rolling it out internally. I assume that adopting Policy Center was a pretty significant impact to some of your frontline workers.
Yes.
And how did you help prepare them for significant change?
Sure. So we had, I'll answer the second question first. We had a transformation readiness office. So throughout the project, they partnered with us and created training materials. We also had the business partners and even the processing team involved in the project, testing with us. So they, right from the beginning, it was their system, they were using it, they were seeing the results month after month as we delivered things. And I think that that helped, one, with their buy-in. It was their system, not something we were just handing to them. And it served as an extra way to get them ready for it as well.
In terms of rollout, so we're the largest insurer in Massachusetts, so we started there, and we haven't rolled further beyond that because the objective was just for Massachusetts. But we have the opportunity, if we choose to go to other states.
Hi, I was questioning, how was your migration? Because you said there was a migration, right? Was it a nightmare? Because usually if you're doing a migration, sometimes it's not fun.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Those are always easy.
Just speaking from experience.
We did have migration. We're in the process of migrating off, so we're doing a roll. It's a 12-month roll, so that's a little bit easier. So the ability to have it, if there's a hiccup, you can react to it much quicker. So it wasn't a big bang, move everything over. So that was a huge benefit. And if you're going to do it, I would highly recommend doing it that way. But even with converting the book over, it still had to function in the back end as if it thought it was pretending to be the old system. So that there was a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of focus making sure that it didn't know that we had changed the front end systems as part of that conversion. So an interesting challenge.
And we are 7 months into the 12-month conversion at this time. And so what we had to do, I think that made it more difficult, is we started in our legacy system, fed those policies over for conversion, maintained the same policy number, and then had to feed it back into our legacy system for the billing and claims. And so when we say we just did Policy Center, we did, but then we had to feed the legacy system with all that precise information that still needed to be there, on-off records that have existed since the beginning of time. And they were able to do that. And the incidents we've had have been one-offs. New products that we put in, new coverages that we put in that used to be 100% manual, those were the only hiccups that really were hitting with the conversion.
Taking in consideration that you just rolled this into Massachusetts, are you working on a sense that Massachusetts is 21st century, rest of the country is 20th century, and how do you manage that schizophrenia of different ways of handling the business, especially if we work for a large corporation that it's globally.
Right.
That adds more complexity to it.
Well, Massachusetts, I would love to say, is an easy state to do business in, but I'd be lying if I said that. Most of the states are difficult to do business in, but we started in Massachusetts because that's really where our focus was and where we knew we could capture the growth quickly. I mean, that's where our BDRs are with the agents. They have a great relationship. So we knew we could roll it out fast, get it out, and have some quick traction, again, based on the goals for commercial auto. When you look at things globally, we definitely, MAPFRE operates in a lot of different countries, and we constantly have meetings with our peers in other countries. We actually, in the US, implemented Guidewire ahead of them, so they've been learning from us, and actually we're the first ones in the cloud as well, so they continue to learn from us. So it's been extremely collaborative. They get the cheat sheet and the easy start for the information we're sharing, but for MAPFRE, they felt the investment of Guidewire in the cloud wasn't just for here, for us in the US, it really was worldwide, knowing that there were other projects that were going to start up, especially in Germany and Italy, and there are other countries that we expect to follow as well. So again, there was a benefit worldwide.
You had mentioned some performance challenges. I'm interested in knowing how you overcame those and what was the impact to business as it related to that when you were going through that.
So that's a great question. We caught the performance issues during our testing, so we weren't rolled out to the business at that point. A lot of them were more of the connectivity between the systems, so once we got to those later phases of testing, we were finding maybe with firewalls or different connectivity that we just needed to tweak a few things. So it wasn't that any one area wasn't performing well, it was just the connectivity between them.
So it wasn't business SLAs that were defined from quoting to policy issuance that you were trying to solve?
No, actually, it was.
Yes.
But we were doing that in test.
Right.
We caught it before we went live. And funny thing is, one of the issues that we found was with one of the monitoring tools that was being used, Dynatrace.
That's what I was going to ask,
Yeah.
too. Once you were in prod, what monitoring tool are you using for the cloud for Policy Center?
So we're using, Guidewire provides the monitoring tools, but we also have, through our middleware layer, we monitor the ins and outs and through our system so that we can see a complete round robin of what the request does. So we use Dynatrace. Right,
Datadog.
right.
Other questions? Yes.
Oh, hello. Yes, sorry, I'm not used to microphones. You said you are migrating this line of business to the cloud. Are you planning to keep the history of this business line on-premise, or you are planning to migrate it to?
That's a good question. So we haven't made that decision yet. I know with claims data, it's always hard to migrate over, but I do know there are accelerators that Guidewire has written to go to the cloud to be able to make that porting easier. That's actually recent, and we weren't aware of that at the time of the implementation. So I think it really just comes down to if we want to do that, obviously what's the cost, what's the time to market, and then do we think we're going to get the benefits that we really should out of migrating that over. Having sunset other systems, I do not want to leave it in the old one because it's another thing to maintain, which I'm sure every IT professional has dealt with. But it really is just going to come down to, is there a business benefit that they believe is going to end up giving them the greatest value? At that point, it's not really going to matter about cost or time. It's going to be business value.
Right. Yeah, and one more. Claim Center, do you have on-premise?
Claim Center for our other lines of business, for our private passenger auto and homeowner, for Massachusetts currently and soon to be other states, is on-premise.
Great. How do you manage the search for the two cores, the Guidewire on-premise and the cloud version?
How do we maintain the? I didn't catch
search.
Search and retrieve of policies.
You don't have that data commingled, so.
No,
No.
we don't.
Yeah.
Right, we don't commingle it. It's actually separate. So if you're from the viewpoint of an agent, if you come in, you can say, I want to sell commercial lines or I want to sell private passenger auto. It takes you to two separate versions of agency portal that look the same and feel the same, and it's single sign-on, makes their life much easier. But the data is not commingled.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions?
Hi. Anything that you would do differently when planning for the bigger transformation of the on-prem systems, kind of based on your learnings in this previous round?
That's a good question. I think I would make sure that the business is better prepared. I mean, we prepared them as best we could. And what I mean by that is when you're going on-prem to the cloud, you're going to deal with things where you're going to have hard conversations. As I mentioned earlier, it comes with a cost, right? When it's on-prem, sometimes people have creative license for what they want to have and know the right people to get it done. That's not unusual to have that happen. The reality is going to be we're going to have a really hard conversation with them that says, this is everything that you've asked for. Here's every cost. Do we really want to move that forward? I think that having that conversation early and having it often so that when we get to the cloud, our ability to move forward is going to be much easier because it's really not going to be the hard part. The hard part is getting to the cloud, and I know it's easy to update afterwards, but if you're dragging a lot of customizations forward that maybe you don't need because of the newer versions of Guidewire, the reality is that's the assessment you constantly have to be doing. The nice part about commercial lines, and we had mentioned it, is we stuck with out of the box a lot. With our other one, we're going to have a little bit more of a challenge, but we'll address that challenge as we get there. But to me, that's what I see as the biggest learning.
Another question quickly. That you have kind of long experience with running kind of on-prem Guidewire and then the cloud version a bit shorter, but kind of how do you see the difference in the IT operations. So have you been happy with the way things are run in the cloud?
So we've been very happy. The deployments, the releases have been super easy. We really just don't have many incidents at all. We have a handful, and they're usually, as I said earlier, just one-off type policies with some nuances, but you know, having everything managed in the cloud has freed up our resources to focus on other things, and it's gone very well. We're very pleased.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the speakers this morning talk about Guidewire in the cloud and Snowcap and how simple they want to make it. The reality is it really looks and feels that way when you're dealing with it, as opposed to, you know, I need to call somebody at 10 at night to get a Jenkins bill to go off to make sure that I can install something. I need to, you know, and there's a hiccup going on, and we didn't experience that. It was actually extremely smooth. Guidewire, again, extremely supportive of us in our requests and working with them. And then to Angie's point, once you're in production, they make it sound easy. It really is that easy when you're in the cloud.
It truly is.
Another question?
So for your conversion, how much automation were you able to achieve, and did you use any like Guidewire tools, SI partner tools to aid in that?
So we started down the path of automation, but then as we looked at the size of the book, we quickly changed direction and have engaged a part of CGI that provides low-cost resources to enable a manual conversion. And that has worked very well. And like Angie said, I mean, defects are very low in terms of that conversion. So.
And believe it or not, it was actually less expensive to do that than it was to do it automated.
Yep.
And it actually has less headaches because what you have to validate as part of an automated process is beginning to end. Whereas if you're just typing it in like an agent, you're only validating one flow. And that was actually a big help for us, especially when it came to time to market.
Yep. So yeah, we were able to engage a business process operation in Manila to help with that manual transformation.
Did you have very many integrations to non-Guidewire? I know you mentioned integrating to Billing Center and things like that. But did you need to do very many integrations either to your own systems that you were retaining or to other third-party like CAB or something similar to that?
So we had our middleware that was built for our on-prem personal lines, and the reuse from there was wonderful. We had a few changes to make, but it really, the on-prem work that was done for personal lines, we were able to leverage all those integrations. The hardest part for us was feeding back to our legacy system to make sure claims and billing was working, but we did a lot of side-by-side testing to make sure that ran smoothly.
I think there was only 3 new vendors outside of personal auto, if I remember correctly, that we had to do an integration from scratch. To Angie's point, we reused everything else that we had, so it was a huge advantage.
Hi. I think this is not a question. I have been attending sessions from morning. By far, this is the best session, I would say, because you gave enough time for the audience to ask questions. It was very well planned. I can see the collaboration between service partners and customers. Just want to appreciate because it was very well planned.
Thank you.
Now I see how it went very smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
it.
I think we have time for a couple more questions. Anybody have any other questions? Okay. Seeing that there aren't any further questions, I'd just like to thank you for your participation. It made, like's been said, it really made this session. I'd like to thank Angie and Kevin for their participation, and I'd also like to remind you that we're located in booth G10. That's where CGI is. Stop by. If you have additional questions, we'll be glad to answer those. And then lastly, please use the app to give us some feedback. Would really appreciate that. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.